Kitchen lights lifted from black to amber. The thermostat nudged warmer. A hidden fan spun up with the soft patience of a server rack. Evan crossed the tile in socks, set water to boil, and glanced through the front window at a street that looked manufactured. Trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, identical roofs. His phone buzzed on the counter. HOA community update. Action required. He ignored it and walked to the spare bedroom he called an office. From the hall, the door was ordinary. Inside, it was quiet and dense with intention. 2 monitors, one small black terminal that never touched civilian Wi-Fi, and a thick cable disappearing through the floor into the crawlspace. The terminal waited for his fingerprint. It accepted him and displayed. Secure link. Standby. Session window. 6:30 to 10:30. Do not interrupt. Evan took his coffee back to the desk and opened the day's checklist. His job, cybersecurity audits for a defense contractor, was mostly invisible work, confirming that doors stayed locked, that handshakes were clean, that 1,000 tiny assumptions still held. At 7:04, his phone buzzed again. Then again. He snatched it, meaning to silence it, and saw the sender. Marjorie Whitlock, HOA President. He opened the message. Dear Mr. Cole, it began, polished and predatory. It has been brought to the board's attention that your property contains an unapproved utility modification visible from the sidewalk, front yard, east corner. This constitutes a violation of Section 4.7, B Exterior Aesthetic Integrity. A compliance hearing has been scheduled for Thursday at 6 p.m. Failure to attend may result in corrective action at the homeowner's expense. Evan stared, then stood and cracked the blinds. At the edge of his lawn, a small green telecom service box sat near the sidewalk, half tucked behind a shrub. It had been there when he bought the house. What he'd added was underneath it, a buried line routed to his office, protected, redundant, and very much not for streaming movies. He looked across the street. Marjorie stood on her driveway in a crisp polo and slacks, arms folded, tablet in hand, watching his house as if waiting for him to glance up. When he did, she lifted 2 fingers in a friendly little wave that felt like a warning. Evan dropped the blind. He typed a short reply because silence only encouraged her. Marjorie, no visible modification. Service box was present at purchase. No exterior change. I'm in compliance with city permits. Evan. Send. Back to work. At 8:11, someone knocked. The knock came again, firm, timed, confident. Evan glanced at the terminal's clock. The secure session didn't care about doorbells. He stood anyway, walked to the front door, and opened it a crack. Marjorie smiled like a customer service rep who'd been waiting to escalate. Good morning, Evan. Marjorie. I'm working. I'll be quick. She held up a manila folder. The board has concerns about your trenching. We have documentation. Documentation of what? She flipped the folder open with practiced speed and produced a glossy photo. It showed his front lawn from the sidewalk, zoomed in on a faint seam in the grass, barely a suggestion of disturbed soil. You can see the disturbance, she said. Section 4.7, B. Evan let out a single breath. That's not visible. That's surveillance. Aesthetic integrity includes the impression of integrity, she replied, as if quoting scripture. That's not. Evan stopped himself. Arguing with Marjorie was like arguing with a stop sign. The yard is restored. No one can see anything. We can, she said brightly. And we represent the community. Evan kept his voice flat. It's permitted. It's safe. End of story. Marjorie's eyes flicked past him, trying to look down the hallway. Is that your office? Evan shifted, blocking the view without thinking. Yes. How interesting. Her smile held. We also have concerns about unauthorized utility connections. We don't want hazards. It's not electrical, Evan said. And it's not your jurisdiction. City permits don't override HOA covenants, she said, tapping the folder. If you'd submitted the request form, this would be simple. I'm not filing HOA paperwork for a buried cable. Marjorie's voice softened, the way people soften when they're about to threaten you. Thursday at 6. The board expects your attendance. I'll be there. Good. She stepped back, then pointed at his front window. One more note. Your router is placed near the glass. That's also inside my house. And visible from the exterior, Marjorie said. Section 4.7. A. Interior objects visible from exterior viewpoints. Evan stared at her until her smile faltered. Marjorie, he said, please leave my porch. She recovered instantly. Of course. I'm simply doing my job. She walked down the steps and paused at the sidewalk, turning as if she'd saved her favorite line for last. If the board determines non-compliance, she called, we reserve the right to remedy the violation ourselves. Evan's throat tightened. You're not touching anything on my property. Marjorie lifted her tablet, as if recording the sentence. We'll see what the bylaws allow. Then she moved on, crisp and unhurried, toward the next perfectly trimmed lawn. Evan closed the door and stood with his hand on the knob, listening to the neighborhood's quiet. Sprinklers ticking, a distant garage opening, a dog barking once and stopping. In the office, the terminal waited, indifferent. Secure link. Ready. OTH required. Evan returned to the desk, pressed his thumb to the pad, and watched the system accept him. He tried to push Marjorie out of his head, but the last line kept repeating anyway. Remedy the violation ourselves, like a promise from someone who didn't understand what she was promising. On his second monitor, a status panel updated in neat, unforgiving green. Latency rising, handshake pending. A tiny map tile showed a node labeled only with an alphanumeric tag. Evan's cursor hovered over the abort button. He didn't click. He couldn't. Not today. Not ever. Outside, everything looked immaculate. Under the grass, something else was awake. The notice came at 9:02 a.m., delivered the way Marjorie Whitlock delivered everything. Clean fonts, false courtesy, and a deadline that pretended to be optional. Final compliance reminder. An authorized utility alteration pending correction. Corrective action scheduled. Today, 10 a.m. Evan read it once, then locked his phone and turned back to the terminal. He was already late in the sequence. A handshake had stalled overnight, not failed, stalled, like a held breath. He adjusted parameters, rerouted a diagnostic ping, and watched the graph settle. The system wanted patience. So did he. At 9:41, a shadow crossed the blinds. Evan stood, heart ticking faster than the clock, and pulled the slats apart an inch. Marjorie stood on the sidewalk with two men he didn't recognize. One wore a municipal-looking vest. The other held a clipboard and a small red toolbox. Between them lay a coil of orange tape and a pair of bolt cutters, jaws clean and confident. Evan's phone vibrated in his pocket. Mr. Cole, Marjorie said through the open window, voice raised but pleasant. We're here to resolve the violation. Evan stepped onto the porch. Get off my property. She smiled as if he'd made a joke. The board authorized corrective action. We notified you. You're trespassing. She gestured to the man with the vest. This is a contracted maintenance supervisor. We're within our rights. The supervisor avoided Evan's eyes. Said there was a hazard. There isn't, Evan said. There's a buried line you're not qualified to touch. Marjorie's smile thinned. You had your chance to cooperate. Evan's phone vibrated again, this time not a notification. A priority alert forced its way onto the lock screen. Secure session. Degraded. Latency critical. He looked from the message to the bolt cutters. Do not do this, Evan said. His voice stayed level, but something sharper threaded through it. You don't understand what you're interfering with. Marjorie lifted a hand. We understand rules. She nodded to the man with the toolbox. The supervisor hesitated. Maybe we should. Proceed, Marjorie said. Evan lunged down the steps. Stop. Too late. The bolt cutters closed with a sound like a snapped bone. The world stuttered. Inside Evan's house, every monitor went black at once, then flared white. The terminal screamed, an unfiltered alarm that bypassed speakers and went straight to bone. Evan staggered, clutching the porch rail as a low-frequency vibration rippled through the floorboards. On the sidewalk, the man with the cutters swore and dropped them. What the hell? The ground hummed. Marjorie's tablet chimed. Then chimed again. Then went dark. Evan's phone burned in his hand. Secure link. Lost. Failsafe. Engaged. Isolation protocol active. He spun back toward the house, sprinted inside, and slammed the office door. The terminal had rebooted into a red screen he had never seen before. Unscheduled disconnect. Node desync. Time to cascade. 2 minutes and 17 seconds. No, Evan breathed. He slapped the desk, fingers flying. Local controls were locked. Remote access was severed. The system had done exactly what it was designed to do, seal itself off from a compromised segment. That segment happened to be under his lawn. His phone rang. Not a number. Just a tone, flat, unmistakable. He answered. Cole. Evan, said a voice he recognized but never expected to hear without scheduling. Why is your node dark? Because my HOA cut the line, Evan said. I told them not to. Silence, then a sharp inhale. Are you joking? I wish. On the terminal, the countdown ticked past 90 seconds. What's your status? The voice asked. Failsafe is holding, Evan said. But if the cascade completes? I know what happens, the voice said. Can you restore? Not without physical reconnect ion. Outside, a siren wailed. Close, then closer. Evan, the voice said, suddenly clipped. Stay where you are. Do not attempt an override. Help is already en route. The line went dead. The hum under the house intensified, a pressure that made his teeth ache. Evan grabbed his jacket and ran back outside. The sidewalk had changed. Orange tape ringed the service box now. The supervisor stood pale and shaking, hands empty. Marjorie stared at the ground as if it had betrayed her. What did you do? She snapped at Evan. Everything just. You cut a protected line, Evan said. You triggered a national security protocol. She laughed, a short, brittle sound. That's ridiculous. The air split with the sound of engines. 2 black SUVs slid into the cul-de-sac without sirens, tires whispering to a stop. A third followed. Doors opened. Men and women stepped out wearing nothing that said who they were, which said everything. Marjorie backed up. You can't park there. This is a fire lane. One of the newcomers looked at her, then at the severed cable, its inner filaments still faintly glowing. Who authorized the cut? He asked. Marjorie lifted her chin. The Homeowners Association. The man nodded once, as if checking a box. He spoke into his sleeve. Confirmed. Initiate perimeter control. Within seconds, the street filled with quiet motion. Neighbors peeked from windows. Someone's drone rose and fell, then dropped out of the sky as if swatted. Evan felt the pressure ease slightly. The hum softened. A woman approached him, eyes sharp, posture precise. Evan Cole. Yes. You're not in trouble, she said, before he could ask. But we need you to answer questions. Now. Marjorie stepped forward. Excuse me, but this is HOA business. The woman didn't look at her. Step back. You don't have jurisdiction here. The woman finally met Marjorie's gaze. You cut a federal communication line. Marjorie opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. That's impossible. 30 minutes ago, the woman said, you disrupted a system designed to prevent hostile intrusion into domestic infrastructure. You're very lucky it did its job. Evan's phone vibrated one last time. Cascade halted. Manual intervention complete. He exhaled for the first time since the cutters snapped shut. As agents moved to secure the site, Marjorie stood frozen on the sidewalk, clipboard slipping from her fingers. For the first time since Evan had known her, she looked small, not powerless, exactly, but finally aware that the rules she worshipped had never been the ones that mattered. And beneath the lawn, something ancient and patient settled back into silence. By noon, The cul-de-sac no longer belonged to the neighborhood. The SUVs hadn't moved, but the street had changed shape around them. Cones appeared. Then barriers. Then a quiet authority that didn't raise its voice yet somehow redirected everything. Delivery trucks, dog walkers, curiosity itself. Doors closed. Blinds tilted. The illusion of normal life retreated indoors. Evan sat at his kitchen table with a paper cup of cooling coffee, hands wrapped around it without drinking. Across from him, a man in a grey jacket reviewed a tablet, his expression neutral in a way that suggested training rather than temperament. "Walk me through it again," the man said. "From the beginning." Evan did, carefully. The warnings. The hearing notice. The cutters. He kept his voice even, stripped of commentary. When he finished, the man nodded and made a note. "You didn't attempt a manual bypass," he said. "I was told never to," Evan replied. "Under any circumstances." "Good answer." Through the window, Evan saw Marjorie Whitlock seated on the curb at the edge of her driveway, flanked by 2 agents. Her clipboard lay face down in the grass. She spoke animatedly, hands slicing the air, her confidence rising and falling in waves that no one mirrored back. "What happens now?" Evan asked. "That depends," the man said. "On cooperation." Another agent stepped into the kitchen, younger, hair pulled tight. "We've secured the segment. Temporary relay is live." The man nodded. "Any sign of external probing?" "Minimal. Whoever was testing the perimeter backed off the second the node went dark." Evan felt a chill. They were already there. The agent met his eyes. "Close enough." Outside, a voice rose. "Marjorie's. This is absurd. I want names. I want documentation." One of the agents replied calmly, too quietly to hear the words. Marjorie laughed, a brittle sound that cracked at the edges. "I didn't do anything illegal," she insisted. "We have bylaws. I followed procedure." The man at the table stood. "That's my cue." He stepped outside. Evan followed to the doorway. "Ms. Whitlock," the man said, holding up a badge that caught the light and gave nothing away. "I need you to listen carefully." Marjorie straightened. Finally, someone reasonable. "You authorized the destruction of infrastructure you did not own," he said. "That infrastructure was federally protected." Her smile flickered. "That's not possible. It was on private property." "That property overlays a secured easement," he replied. "One that predates your association by 40 years. She waved a hand. "Then why wasn't it disclosed?" "It was," he said. "In documents you waived when you accepted the board position." Marjorie's mouth opened. "Closed. That's not." "You didn't read them," the man said, not accusing, simply stating. Silence settled around them. Somewhere down the street, a garage door started to open, then stopped halfway. Marjorie's voice dropped. "This is harassment." "No," the man said. "This is containment." Another agent approached, speaking low. "We've got media interest." The man nodded. "Keep it local. No details." Marjorie pushed herself to her feet. "You can't just take over a neighborhood." The man turned to her. "We're not taking over. We're preventing a larger failure." She looked at Evan then, really looked, as if seeing him for the first time without the filter of violation notices. "What are you?" Evan didn't answer. The agent beside her did. A contractor who did exactly what he was supposed to do. They escorted her toward one of the SUVs. She resisted at first, then seemed to deflate, heels dragging slightly on the pavement. "I want my lawyer," she said. "You'll have one," the agent replied. "After the debrief." As the door closed, Evan felt a strange mix of relief and unease. The danger hadn't exploded. It had folded inward, compressed into quiet conversations and controlled movements. Inside the house, the terminal glowed again, no longer red, but amber, cautious, awake. A woman Evan hadn't seen before stood in his office, studying the setup without touching anything. "You keep it clean," she said. "Most people get sloppy at home." "It's not home," Evan replied. It's just where I sleep. She smiled faintly. That checks out. She gestured to the screen. You understand how close that was? Yes. How close? Evan considered. Close enough that someone on the other end knows they were noticed. The smile faded. That's our assessment too. Outside, neighbors gathered in small knots, pretending coincidence. Whispers moved faster than facts. An agent approached Evan with a folder. We'll need you to relocate the physical connection. I assumed, Evan said. We'll handle the trenching. Different route. Deeper. Invisible. Evan nodded. What about the HOA? The agent paused. There won't be one. Not here. What happens to her? Consequences, the agent said. Proportional. The afternoon wore on. Equipment arrived, then vanished. The severed cable was removed like evidence from a crime scene, sealed and labeled. Fresh sod was laid with surgical care. By evening, the barriers came down. The SUVs left one by one, engines fading into ordinary traffic. Evan stood alone on his porch as the street exhaled. Across the way, Marjorie's house was dark. His phone buzzed once. Relocation complete. New node verified. Resume normal operations. Evan went back inside, closed the door, and returned to his desk. The terminal accepted him without ceremony. Outside, the neighborhood looked exactly as it had that morning. Perfect lawns, clean lines, rules intact. Only now, Evan knew what lay beneath. And who had the final say? The neighborhood woke the next morning pretending nothing had happened. Sprinklers clicked on schedule. Garage doors lifted in polite succession. A jogger passed Evan's house without slowing, eyes forward, earbuds in, determined not to remember the armored vehicles or the sudden silence that had swallowed the street the day before. Evan stood at his kitchen sink, watching condensation slide down the glass, and let the illusion persist. At 8:03 a.m., his phone rang. Cole, he answered. You're clear, the voice said. Same woman from before. Efficient. Controlled. No further action required on your end. Understood. A pause. You did good work. The line disconnected. Evan set the phone down and waited for the aftershock that never came. No adrenaline spike. No sense of victory. Just the quiet certainty that the world had adjusted itself and moved on. Outside, a moving truck idled in front of Marjorie Whitlock's house. He noticed it only because the curtains there were wide open. Boxes lined the driveway, stacked with careless speed. No labels. No neat organization. The house looked suddenly smaller without her standing guard over it. A man in a suit directed movers with quick gestures. Another stood near the truck, speaking into his phone. No logos. No uniforms. Just purpose. Evan watched as Marjorie stepped out onto the porch. She looked different. Not defeated, something sharper than that. Stripped. Her posture remained rigid, but the confidence that once radiated from her had collapsed inward, leaving only control without an audience. She noticed Evan then. For a moment, neither of them moved. She crossed the street slowly, as if afraid the ground might object. They told me not to speak to you, she said, stopping a few feet away. Evan leaned against the porch rail. You don't have to. Her mouth tightened. I didn't know. I know. They said the bylaws were irrelevant. A bitter laugh escaped her. Do you have any idea how long I spent memorizing those? Evan didn't answer. She looked at his lawn, pristine, indistinguishable from the others. All that effort, she said quietly. And I never saw what was actually there. No, Evan said. You didn't. Her eyes flicked up. You could have told me. I did, he replied. You just didn't like the answer. Silence stretched between them, uncomfortable but clean. They're dissolving the board, she said. Effective immediately. Evan nodded. They said I can't hold an office position again. Anywhere. Her voice wavered, then steadied. They were very specific. I'm sorry, Evan said, and meant it, not for her loss of power, but for the cost of learning what power wasn't. She studied his face, searching for triumph, resentment, anything she could catalogue and understand. She found none of it. "What happens now?" she asked. "You go on," Evan said. "So does everyone else." She exhaled, a long breath she seemed to have been holding for years. "You were never breaking the rules, were you?" "No," Evan said. "Just working under different ones." Marjorie nodded once, then turned back toward her house without another word. By noon, the truck was gone. The house sat empty, windows reflecting the sky like blank eyes. Evan returned to his office. The floor had been repaired overnight. No seam. No hint. The cable no longer ran beneath the lawn but somewhere deeper, farther, rerouted through layers of infrastructure that had nothing to do with homeowners' meetings or compliance forms. The terminal waited. Session available. Secure channel verified. He logged in. The system responded instantly, smoother than before, as if pleased with the new arrangement. Data flowed. Alerts remained green. Somewhere far beyond the neighborhood, unseen watchers resumed their quiet vigilance. A message appeared in the corner of the screen. Relocation permanent. Easement status. Classified. Evan closed it and leaned back, listening to the hum of a machine that no longer needed to hide. That evening, the neighborhood gathered at the clubhouse. Not for a meeting, those were cancelled indefinitely, but for something closer to reassurance. People stood in loose circles, speculating carefully, testing theories the way one tests water with a toe. "Gas leak," someone suggested. "No, I heard it was a telecom upgrade. My cousin works for the city. He said it was nothing." Evan passed through without stopping, nodding where politeness required. No one stopped him either. Whatever status he had once held as the quiet, non-compliant resident had evaporated, replaced by something less definable. At the clubhouse door, a printed notice fluttered in the breeze. Important community update. HOA operations suspended. Further information forthcoming. No signatures. No fine print. Evan smiled faintly and walked home. That night, he sat on the porch as the streetlights flickered on, one by one. The neighborhood had returned to symmetry. Lawns aligned. Houses matched. Order restored. Beneath it all, a different order endured. His phone buzzed with a final message, this one unsecured. Rule update. Aesthetic guidelines revised. Underground infrastructure exempt. No sender. Evan locked the screen and set the phone aside. Somewhere in the distance, beyond the reach of covenants and committees, systems communicated at speeds that made human arguments irrelevant. Lines crossed and uncrossed. Threats probed and retreated. Balance held. Evan went inside, turned off the lights, and let the house settle around him. The neighborhood would keep its rules. The world would keep its secrets. And this time, everyone knew exactly which mattered more.